This is a Momentum Media production.
Investing Insights with Right Property Group, exploring trends in real estate and helping property investors gain financial security.
G'day, how you going? Phil Tarrant, co-host Investing Insights with Right Property Group. Getting stuck into that guitar riff, getting ready for the end of the year, which is just around the corner, and what a year it has been. A formative year for property and property investors. And I think as we move into 2023, there will be a lot of people taking stock as they eat their Christmas cake and cook their Christmas turkey, working out whether or not they've had a good year or a bad year, and considering what 2023 is going to look like. We're going to break it down today and work out who is going to be the winners and the losers for 2023 in property investment. Joining me in the studio, Steve Waters, Victor Kumar, directors of the Right Property Group. Gentlemen, Victor will always be a winner, but you, Stephen.
Well, they say you're the sum equal of the people that you hang around, and I hang around you. So if I'm a loser, you'd be the big loser.
It's the averages that drag us down, isn't it?
The averages bring us down. Well, they reckon you're the median of the 5 people that you hang around most, or something or other.
Absolutely, I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah,
big believer in that. I mean, somehow you snuck into the circle. It's but I think we just felt sorry for you.
The difference between me and you, Steve, is that I'm the way up. You're on the way down, mate. You've had your day in the sun.
I've had my day in the sun.
Like a lot of property investors over 2021, 2022, they've had their day in the sun. You've got the rude awakening, the clueless enthusiasm over the COVID pandemic isn't really property investing, is it?
Well, it's an interesting comment there, Phil, in and around, time is done or had my day or whatever it was. It's ironic that we enter into 2023 and I've been doing this for 23 years. So I'd say that's a long time in the sun. How about you? How long you been doing it for?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm about a decade in, but I'm the empire on which the sun never sets, Stephen.
House of the Rising Sun.
Mate, you guys are the Rome of property investing.
Oh my God, this is a podcast, Phil, about property investing, not about who's got the best slander.
Who's on the way up? Who's on the way down? I know, Steve, but this is the point. You've seen through 2020, 2021, 2022, through the height of pandemic, property being a mainstay of conversation to sort of measure the health of the economy, irrespective of some of the challenges that went through COVID. A lot of people thought and think property investing is easy if they've started investing during that period of time. Pretty much everything you touch turned to gold. You've had a sway of new buyers agents coming to the market as a result of their success through property over the 3 sort of years of COVID pandemic. The market is very different today than what it was back then. And I know there's a lot of people thinking about 2023 with quite a lot of concern, Steve and Victor, about whether or not their portfolios are sustainable as we get these spiking rates. So I think it's got to be a real clear indicator, 2023, about just how good a property investor people are. The decisions they've made running up to 2023 and the decisions they will make moving forward really determine the health of these portfolios and whether or not you're going to get sort of wholesale, inverted commas, blood on the streets of people that are being able to unsustain property portfolios. How are you guys reading it sort of at a macro level?
I think it's almost history repeating itself, to be honest with you. Not so much the circumstances, but the result from those circumstances and the narrative in and around it. And what I mean by that is, well, we don't have to go back too far where there was this same sort of narrative, within the different media channels in and around 2 elections ago. Before that, it was the APRA handbrake. Before that, it was the GFC. Before that, it was the end of the low doc loan. As we've mentioned before, there's always a crisis. It just varies on how big it is, but the repercussions are usually the same. And that is, there are 2 cohorts of people. One is those that have approached it with what you mentioned earlier on, that clueless enthusiasm. So just jump onto the tiger's tail and ride the market without any forethought. So no planning, no preparation, just get into a rising market. And you could argue that it's the same for a lot of different asset classes, whether it be crypto, property, shares, whatever, business, side hustles. And then the other cohort are the ones that have approached it in a methodical and strategic sense, where they have modeled out, for want of a better word, what the worst case scenario is, and then make those strategic decisions around purchasing, so that you're really judging your own circumstances and that of the asset class in the worst possible scenario, rather than when the sun is always shining. And as a result of that, there'll be a large section of people, investors, and I do classify, just as a side note, if you're a homeowner and you're living in that property, you're an investor. You've invested into the asset class. So there'll be a degree of people or families next year that will either have to sell or will want to sell because of what they think is the future of the asset class, not in the long term, but in the short term. And they haven't even probably thought about the medium term. And I believe that it'll be those people that, I guess, that investor with clueless enthusiasm is, once again, as you mentioned, without the planning, without the preparation, that could potentially shape next year's market, void of all the other fundamentals.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something really important there, Steve, which is that most investors that aren't methodical, that don't work towards a plan, they generally jump onto the successes or the success stories of other investors, right? Whether they're true or not, those stories are true or not. They don't drill back into what the methodology was, what the pieces were that were put in place to actually get that success. So they just look at the shiny success and they jump on, without really assessing the worst case scenario. Because if you invest and address the worst case scenario and you then aim for the best case, you can't go wrong. But most people just simply go glaze over the worst case scenario and they just go for, okay, this is the best case, property would double, or it's going through a very strong rise in this area, so I'll jump on. And generally, because they haven't taken their own personal circumstances into account, when things like this happen, such as sharp interest rate rises, the changing sentiment, the unavailability or the restriction of finance, of credit, and then you throw in when people will most likely be standing around barbecues talking about property and how hard it is. My repayments have jumped up by $700 or $1,000 a month because I'm now principal and interest over Christmas. And then the New Year's resolution of, this is all getting too hard. Let's wipe the slate clean. Let's get out of this. Because they haven't taken the fundamentals into account, because they haven't taken their own circumstances into account, they're not seeing the opportunities behind the immediate problems that are solvable if you just took a methodical approach towards it.
It's a good point, Vic, because even if you took property out of it and you just look at some of the, not even the biggest, but some of the most successful investors in whatever the asset class is, it's usually going against the media grain is when they make the most of their money. And it's not so much they're making their money at that particular moment in time. What they're doing is they're getting the opportunity to control a A-grade, first-class investment asset and have plenty of choice around it so that they're controlling the good asset for that medium and that long-term future. And if we bring it back, I guess, with some context, and Phil, that you started at the end of the GFC. There was no better time to have the ability to control a good asset. Like there hasn't been a better time in the 23 years that I've been doing this. Now you fast forward to the end of the GFC and it wasn't that long. Yeah, there was some bumps and there was some hurdles and what have you. And I do sort of preface it by saying that everybody's circumstances are different and those that are prepared have the best ability to execute. And I don't suggest that we're in a GFC environment today, but what we do have is the speed of information, whether it be positive or negative, that are affecting people's mindset on whether to invest in something or not. the beginning of COVID, after that sort of 6-month bracket, the narrative was that everybody is investing, everybody should invest, and look at these price gains that are starting to perpetuate. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy because of that speed of information and news. And we've talked about that before, but so too is the opposite now. Same scenario in terms of that speed and of information, but it's not positive now. It's negative. But the sophisticated investor or the well-prepared and strategic investor is just going, well, you know what, nothing's changed other than the cost of money and maybe my ability to be able to borrow as much as I'd like, but the fundamentals are still there. And I think we mentioned this in the last podcast, Phil. I don't think there's been a better time in terms of the pot is full of those important fundamentals like I've never seen before. The majority of them are there. I cannot think back in the last 23 years where we've got this many tick box items. Yeah, we're missing a few, but my God, we've got a hell of a lot of them, more so than ever.
So, to summarise very sort of considered thoughts, you've had a lot of fair weather investors over the last 2 years, and it's starting to get stormy out there, and only those who are prepared and plan, who've done the hard work at the front end, will be able to ride whatever storm we come into. And whether it's a storm or not, who knows? To your point, Steve, the conditions for property investment are probably as good as they get right now, despite the need for some people to recalibrate their strategy or the price points they can invest within. We're running into this Christmas sort of break, New Year's Eve, summer break. Not a lot gets done in January. Reserve Bank doesn't meet till February. So you're going to be able to, and I know the Reserve Bank is going to be leaning on those 2 months of data to actually see what's going on, whether or not the impact of those interest rate rises that they wanted have been felt. Have you guys seen anecdotally just within your client base, are people tightening their belt yet? Are you starting to see that being impacted? Are people more concerned about their ability to secure finance or pay down finance? Or are those investors you're working with the ones who have done the smart work at the front end and can go ahead sort of full guns knowing their capacity, Victor?
Well, like anything, you can teach and coach everyone, but it's usually 1 or 2% that actually don't implement. But I'd like to say that majority, if not all of our clients, have sailed through this with a very solid plan. And that's thanks to our review process and also the set plan that we've got for everything, right? Now, I want to go back to your analogy of fair weather investors sailing into rougher waters, right? And this is where experience comes in. So in fair weather, anyone can sail about, right? Give or take. But when it gets rougher, it's either when you have got experience or you have someone by your side that has got experience that actually is able to foretell what sort of waves you're going to hit and how to combat that, rather than you trying to find your own way out. Now, of course, it may work out if you're trying to find your own way out. However, with someone guiding you, you're leaning on their experience as well. So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel all over again. And I think that will be really paramount next year. And that's true for all of our clients. And for anyone that's investing, you really need to, anyone that started investing in the last 3 years, I'd say you really need to compare notes with someone that's a lot more experienced so that you're not making a rash decision, such as trying to offload the property unnecessarily where there's other ways to hold on to weather this storm before you hit the calmer waters again. And a lot of people actually lose a significant amount of assets because they are more reactive to the immediate problem as opposed to more approached and more planned towards the problem. So you need to actually look what's behind the problem and not get caught up in the sentiment of it and find the opportunity. And sometimes the opportunity is that, just weather it out. Have that mindset to weather it out because it's going to be only short term. But for others, it may be that, to prevent you from capsizing, you actually need to bail out. In other words, you need to sell 1 or 2 properties, even if it is at a slighter discount in comparison to what you would have got in the yesteryears, so that you're actually able to then reach your goals or retack once the weather is calmer, to be able to catch up on what you've, in inverted commas, lost out on.
Yeah. And I think what Vic's also trying to say is that it's not a matter, we're not trying to say that everybody should be out there considering purchasing. That's not the case. It's more about recalibrating to hold, so that, as we've mentioned before, sometimes you'll make more money by doing nothing than you will by selling or purchasing. However, there is a group of investors out there that should potentially accelerate if they have the capacity. And then there are those, I would probably think that a small percentage, that maybe the best thing for them is to rethink their portfolio. And if that means selling one or two of the assets for whatever the reason, then so be it. Because no matter how much you plan and prepare, sometimes life just throws a curveball at you, and the best thing to do is sell for quality of life, albeit a small minority. But for those that are just reacting, I guess, to the situation without any real clarity, without any real thought process behind it, they're the ones that are going to suffer in the future. And once again, going back to the GFC, and we've mentioned this before, yes, we all lost value from our assets, generally speaking, during the GFC, but nobody had to sell from a lack of equity, or very, very few people, maybe in the commercial space, had to sell from a lack of equity or value situation. They had to sell because it was a lack of cash flow management. And that lack of cash flow management was a combination of poor preparation or not recalibrating to certain circumstances slightly before they came into effect. They were apparent, but they didn't come into effect. And there's no difference now. And a great example of that was, how many podcasts have we done over the last, how many years have we been doing this? 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years, something like that. How many podcasts have we mentioned be liquid all the time? How many times have we said that cash flow management is crucial? Have the cash before you need it. How many times have we said you need to continually review and adjust and recalibrate and then take actions? Like, it's a repetitive thing because it's so important. And I know that there'd be an element of people out there that say, yep, you're banging on about the same stuff all the time. But the reason we do that is because of now, because of what is happening right now, because we've been through that. We've been there, done that, seen that. Initially, when we really didn't know what we're doing, because there was none of us, we learned the hard way 23 years, or Victor's 24 years ago. But we're happy to share those lessons that we've learned. And that's why we keep saying the same things every single time.
Yeah, because when you drill down and looking at mortgage possessions or distressed sales, there really is only two reasons these sales are, in inverted commas, distressed sales. One is either a relationship breakdown, or the other is that there isn't any cash flow available to hold on to the asset. It's nothing else. And when you drill down on the relationship breakdown, one component of a relationship breakdown is the money management, where if finances are really hard, relationships tend to break down. So as we're going into the new year, obviously with all of us making our goals and so forth, a lot of people, when they're starting out on investing, or they've got a fairly small portfolio, say let's say 1 or 2 properties, are likely to hold back. And like Steve said, for some, it is the right decision. But you don't want to be making your decisions based on what media sentiment is, what the general sentiment is out there. You really need to be making the decisions on continuing your portfolio based on your ability to hold on to the assets. So that way it does 2 things. One, it allows you to continue growing your portfolio. So you're averaging out. So at some point in time, you may be buying in a market that's a lot more competitive. Going into the early new year, I reckon that the market is not likely to be that competitive. Of course, no one can predict the future. It all depends on the stock available in the market and so forth. Then the other thing that we'd be looking at also is that when someone sets the investing in motion, the media sentiment, the negative news and all that tends to create opportunities. So what we need to be looking for is, yes, we've got a problem that's been portrayed. Property market's going down, finance is harder to get, interest rates are on the way up, there's uncertainty in the market. Whenever there's uncertainty in the market, there is a clear flow of wealth from the unprepared to the prepared. So going into the new year, you really need to be prepared. You need to evaluate what your mortgages cost you. what adding a new property into your portfolio, is that going to make or break the portfolio? And you need to take the thought process of, okay, the rates will continue going up for at least another, say, 1%. And that gives you a good buffering in terms of if it's even another percent added, and if it's all of your loans turn into principal and interest, can you hold on? And if so, how are you going to hold on? Are you going to restructure your mortgages? Are you going to find efficiencies within your portfolio, within your household budget? Are you going to review all of your rents? Are you going to seek advice? Or are you going to then be too over enthusiastic and purchase an asset that actually brings you down, so it bleeds you cash flow? And with one or two more interest rate rises, it tilts the whole portfolio into significant negative cash flow where you can't sustain to hold on.
So listen to all this, Victor and Steve, like everything's changed, but nothing has changed, right? You know, we're talking about this idea of, you know, it's been fair weather sailing, moving to stormy seas. Is it really, like, I think we've got to give some sense to, is it really stormy seas, or is it just property and this is just very, very normal, and don't be concerned and don't be worried, and, you know, there's not some overt issue about, you know, Armageddon on the way. This is property investment. That's pretty standard stuff, this market.
It's the norm. I think we did a podcast, Phil, a couple of months ago where we said it's no one's market. It's not a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. It's a market. And I feel that the media, and you can put some, I guess, commentary around this, considering you are a journo, but the media just seems like a rabbit in the spotlight. It's telling this story. It might be positive. It's telling that story. It might be negative. It's telling this story because it's going to create engagement, which I know that's the job of the media. And the reason I say that is, I think it was yesterday, I read one of the banks came out, said that tipping rates to fall in 2024. And literally 2 months prior to that, they were saying that they won't stop going up until 2025. The RBA's got different commentary every month, which it should do as well, because they're analysing the data. But my point is, things change very, very quickly. Think where we were 12 months ago today. We were in a hyper hot market where there was very little talk around, you know, what we have today. And you go a couple of months before that, and it was white hot, molten lava hot market. So a lot can happen in a short period of time. And yeah, I think it's important that the listener just understands that. You know, as we said, the days are long, the years are short. And it's not that long ago that we had the GFC. It wasn't that long ago that APRA pulled the handbrake. Things happen so quickly. So as long as we can control the asset in a meaningful, safe way, then nothing changes, because we have got a long-term view. This isn't about the last couple of years where prices were going up $100,000 a month. It's not about that. That was a moment in time, highly irregular, not healthy, not sustainable. Now we're into a more normalized market, which we keep referring to. You know, something's going up, something's going sideways, something's going down. And that is the market today. There is still markets going up. Yes, there are markets that have given back. Yes, there are markets that are holding firm. That's a normalized market. If you actually stripped, well, here's a question, and it'd be interesting to see what the answers were if we could have a poll. But if we stripped the narrative in and around the cost of living out, right? So we could magically make that disappear and just have the narrative in and around the interest rate rises. Would there still be the same commotion if we could strip it out today? Because I truly believe that, yes, the cost of money it's obviously a big part of the equation, but people are dealing with it. It's when you tack on everything else. Like, it wasn't too long ago, I actually found a mortgage statement, a picture of a mortgage statement in my phone the other day when I was just going through photos for a property I bought, I'm going to say 5 years ago, maybe, or something like that, a St. George statement where I was paying 6.4%.
Yeah, that was normal.
And it seemed like yesterday. And I was super happy to get it. 6.4%. I'm not paying 6.4%. Well, actually, I am paying 6.4% now, but not on the majority of my loans. Like, this is a normalized period, and I think people have just got to get used to it. And going back to what Vic said earlier on, or sorry, the question you asked, Phil, about, what are we seeing within our clients? I would say, and Vic could echo my thoughts here, but over the last 2 months, I have done an enormous amount of reviews with clients who are in the workup stage, as we refer to it. So they're preparing for the first half of next year, but it starts now. And they're preparing because they're confident. They're preparing because they understand that it is a long-term play, not a short-term scenario. But that's, I would suggest, is a repercussion of the continual reviews we do, the education, good podcasts like this, other good buyers agents within our field, etc. It's not the doom and gloom in terms of between people's ears that the media would have. Or maybe it is. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I am that far out of touch, and it's because I deal and communicate and work with a lot of people that want to do. So they're doers as opposed to speculators or blamers or sit on the fence type of people. Maybe I'm in the fortunate position, going back to your earlier remark, you're the sum equal of the 5 people you hang with. It's infectious. And I believe that in investing, when you get it right, but it's not all beer and Skittles. There's a lot of work that has to happen before you activate. And going back to my point, the amount of reviews I've done in the last 2 to 3 months is enormous in preparation for the first half of next year, because that's how long it could take.
So this is a podcast about winners and losers for 2023. So let's break this down. Let's do 3 losers and 3 winners for 2023. And we'll start with the losers. We'll choose one each, Victor and Steve. I'll participate in this. I'll start with you, Vic. Losers for 2023.
They are the people that would think that it's all too hard. They, getting through that process of mortgage restructure, getting your finances right, getting the cash flows right. It's all too much. It's too hard. And the first no that they encounter, they stop. So rather than going to a different lender or asking different questions, because the quality of your answers is determined by the quality of your questions, right? So if they are asking the wrong questions because of the mindset, they will get that sort of a result. So that would be the biggest losers in my mind, is the person that's unprepared and buys into the general hype that's out there in terms of rising interest rates, how hard it is to hold on to properties and so forth. Because when you really look at it, the spread, as we say, which is the difference between the rent coming in and the mortgage repayments going out, is really no different to what it was 5 years ago. I dare say it's better now. The spread is much thinner. So there's better cash flow coming in. So they would, in my mind, be the biggest losers out there.
Yeah, Steve, loser for 2023?
I think the uneducated. And what I mean by that is the people that are uneducated around the asset, like have a true understanding of it. The person that's uneducated around their financial circumstances, now, tomorrow, and the next day. The uneducated in and around cycles. The uneducated around being a reactionary investor rather than a proactive investor. Essentially, that's what it is, because when you don't have that education, you don't have clearly the knowledge and you don't know how to act accordingly. That's what I would think. And Phil Tarrant.
Property loser. Maybe I need to start a new podcast called Property Losers. That's what we need. My point, I'd echo what Victor said around. I think people the losers will be those who aren't intrinsically connected with their mortgages and perpetually looking to make sure they got the best product at the best rate with the best features. But I reckon losers for 2023, and you're going to see when the market does shift, when interest rates plateau and start going down, whenever that takes place, you're going to get a lot of economic commentators talking about the need for new dwellings and all this sort of resolving some of the rental stress and all those type of things, which is all very fair and valid. But it's going to be, I reckon, the losers will be those people that listen to investment spruikers. You're going to see a lot of people coming out of the woodworks trying to sell you off-the-plan apartments or other similar things with very good tax incentives and all this sort of stuff. And people will get swept up in that, and there'll be a buying frenzy around those type of assets. So I think the losers will be those people who get caught up in the hype of where and what to invest in, rather than, just focusing on baseline fundamentals and not getting stuck. New investors getting stuck buying, for example, off the plan apartments with a settlement date in 2 years' time, sort of putting a set of handcuffs on themselves so they can't invest in anything else for 2 years, and then having the risk of that stuff not stacking up at settlement, or even finishing, or a building own bust, or not being able to get finance at that point in time. That's
education.
Stuff.
That's education. It's like, find the right people, get the right information, I believe. But you are right. There is an element that we see, and that you've seen time and time again, that push that avenue of, I guess, purchasing type. And let's not go into that too deep. It's just not our flavor, and that's the way it is. What about the winners, Phil? Who are the winners of 2023?
I think the winners are those property investors who understand and appreciate that property investment is boring and it's methodical and there's nothing sexy about it. And they're able to look outside of their own paradigm for what they think constitutes a good property. And I think a lot of that will be location-based. I still think there's a lot of merit looking outside of the capital cities. That said, I think there'll be some good buying inside of the capital cities, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. But, capitalising on the sort of geographic spread of Australia and not only looking at metropolitan markets, I think there's really good value in some regional markets. And regional markets doesn't mean small. There's some big regional centres around. That would be my view.
Vic?
I think the winner would be a prepared, proactive purchaser. Now, I use the word purchaser deliberately and not investor. The reason being that there'd be a lot of people that would look at upgrading homes and so forth as well next year. And this could be, whilst they were priced out of the market due to competition in the yesteryears, this year could be the year where they actually upgrade their home, and also looking at investing in property, borderless, right? So not just being constrained within their traditional purchasing grounds, because that's what's portrayed in media. So being able to spread the wings further and not speculating. So basically what we're trying to find is a property with a problem and fix the problem to get to the profits.
I think the winner of 2023 will be the person that doesn't sell. That's who I
agree.
think the winner will be.
I think that's the best one out of the lot.
And that's quite a general statement, because some people will need to. There's no doubt about that. But those that just don't react and they keep their asset for the long term, they're going to be the real winners. There's just no doubt about it. And history has proved that point time and time again, because none of us have a crystal ball to know when the top and the bottom of a market is. None of us have a crystal ball to know when to time it perfectly. And that was one of the podcasts we did with you, Phil, a couple of months ago, around timing and time in the market and how people misunderstand the phrase. But I think the person that holds doesn't sell. They're the people that will win.
And again, I think the simplicity of our answers really showcases just how boring property can be. If you ask the same question to other people, they would probably have a very complicated answer. They might be saying, the winners will be those people who buy options on property and do this, that, and the other, and all this really convoluted, complicated stuff that no one really understands. So it goes back to the baseline level that property is a game of time, and it's a game of patience, and it's a game of finance, and it's a game of strategy, all the good stuff that most people like. But it's methodical, and that's what property investment needs to be. That's why, to the point that you made, you need smart people on your side, Vic, to help you along. You need that, back to the analogy of fair weather sailors, right? You got to make sure you got the right boat for the right conditions, absolutely. But if you're outside of your depth and you don't know what to do, there's always someone that can help you out. And that's the reason why people turn to organizations like the Right Property Group to help them in terms of property strategy and the tactical execution of it. You guys must be fired up for 2023. You're going to be investing yourselves, or you guys done?
No.
We are always investing.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point, right? Like, we're in a very fortunate situation to have our finger on the pulse of all these different components of all the different types of markets, finance, real estate, whatever it may be. It's because it's what we do. Look, that's our job. That's what we do almost 24/7. So when the times are right for our circumstances, we purchase. A lot of that is also usually due to how much the bank is willing to give us, being self-employed, as you would know, Phil. But an opportunity is an opportunity. It's, value is value. And when you see it, you execute. And when you don't, you don't. But always got to be in a state of preparation.
Preparation is key. Well, very good. So you guys free and available over January, or are you setting meetings for February, Vic? What's the best way for people to touch base and expectations around time to have a chat with you guys?
Well, the best way to contact us is via the website or through our socials. So if you went to our website, rightpropertygroup.com.au, there's a contact me form. There is a process, obviously. Melissa, who is a very accomplished property investor, she has a chat with you first to make sure that you get the best of our time when time is set for either myself or Steve to have a chat with you. And then obviously it's a matter of getting into the diary. And this is where it highlights preparedness, right? So the reason why we have this process is so that we actually helping you prepare to have a very constructive conversation with us so that we can guide you in terms of whether to purchase or not, where to purchase, and building a strategic plan, not just a one-off purchase, but building a strategic plan towards a income goal and towards a lifestyle goal.
Sounds pretty good. Can't complain with that. Well, Steve Waters, Victor Kumar, Directors, Right Property Group, thanks for your time and thanks for a great 2022 for investing insights of the Right Property Group. We'll be back again next year. And again, we completely in your hands on how we want to progress this over the next season of 2023. Victor, best way to contact questions at rightpropertygroup.com.au by memory?
Yep. If you have any questions, questions at rightpropertygroup.com.au. If you wanted to sit down with us, obviously just the socials or the website.
Excellent. Right, gentlemen, thanks for your time today and thanks for all your insights over 2022. Let's see what 2023 takes us, but no doubt listeners to this podcast will be winners, I'd like to think, in property investment in 2023. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature, does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed